This week in worship, I'll be preaching on Revelation 17 and 18 as we make our way through the back half of this book. And in Revelation chapter 17, we're introduced to a pretty graphic and intense symbol image, one that modern readers would probably find offensive at first glance. It's the image of the great prostitute who's introduced in this chapter, and she's described in a number of ways, but kind of the main feature is her name, and she's called Babylon. And so I want to take just a second and explain why this image is used, what it represents, what the name means, and kind of the message that John is communicating through this symbol of a great prostitute or a harlot. John is not writing this text in a vacuum. He's not having this vision in a vacuum. He is a Jewish man who has an extensive lexicon of theological language and images and symbols, and he is deeply informed by the Hebrew scriptures. So when you come across something like a harlot or a prostitute or sexual immorality or promiscuity or something like infidelity, those have a very typical connotation within the Hebrew scriptures. And more often than not, they're not really used to describe sexual sin. They're used as a metaphor, as a way of describing a spiritual condition that exists in God's people. And it's communicating the same idea in this text. So if you were to go back and read the prophets, especially something like Hosea or one of the prophets during the time of the exile, you would see that when God talks about Israel as being promiscuous or committing infidelity or being sexually immoral, it's tying into covenant language, this idea that God has married himself to Israel. He is Israel's bridegroom and that Israel is meant to be his bride. But over and over again, the people of Israel stray away from God. They give their heart and their allegiance and their loyalty to foreign nations, foreign gods, foreign kings, to the influence of the culture around them. And so scripture will use this metaphor, this relational metaphor, to describe the spiritual condition of idolatry, really, of giving your heart to a God other than Yahweh. In Revelation, it's communicating the same idea, but the idea is that there is this great harlot who is seducing the whole world. She has a worldwide influence, and she's given this name Babylon. And Babylon is another really powerful symbol, another loaded word in the canon of Scripture. You go all the way back to something like Genesis 11, you have the story of the Tower of Babel, which is ultimately a story of man's arrogance, man's self-deification, literally building a tower to the heavens in this act of defiance against God. And so you kind of combine these two images, and it's this notion that we live in John's initial audience, live in a time and a culture where we are surrounded by opulence and wealth and luxury and this striving to make ourselves like gods, this arrogance that is pervasive throughout our culture that influences the highest ranks of culture, like kings and leaders, that gets the whole world drunk with this notion of what we can make for ourselves. And it's ultimately an act of defiance to God. And so Babylon and the harlot of Babylon, or the prostitute of Babylon, becomes this pattern that represents the overarching culture and sentiment towards God that exists in our world, in John's world. And really, it's a pattern going all the way back to historic Babylon, but finding expression in John's time through the imperial power and regime of Rome, and in every culture, including our own culture today. And it's a sobering text in that it calls us as Christians to be wary of the different ways in which the world around us tries to seduce us with this promise of safety or security or identity or wealth or power or status. There are lots of different ways in which this harlot tries to seduce us, to steal our allegiance, our loyalty, our love and reverence from God, and instead submit to her. And so it's a really powerful symbol. And if you're encountering it without any kind of context, it can be really confusing and kind of offensive at first glance. But when you kind of plug it back into the overall structure of Scripture, you see its relevance both to John's audience as first century Christians, lots of them coming from a Jewish background. But now you kind of see its importance in the way we view our culture and the influence of our culture today. And it serves as a great reminder for where our heart and our allegiance ultimately belong, and that's to Jesus Christ. And so I hope this was helpful to you. I hope to see you on Sunday as we continue to make our way through chapter 17 and 18. God bless you and have a great weekend.